We're on Spanish soil and it's the Tour of Murcia. We're down in the south of Spain for this one-day race. 198.7 kilometers of racing. For some, they've already had a good handful of races under their belt to start their 2024 season. For others, it's their first race of the season, first race in new team colours, and for some teams it's their first race on European soil. There's Melissa Bike making their first appearance on European soil here at the Tour of Murcia. Taking a look at the sign-on for the riders. Nice lively start at the beginning earlier on this morning. There's the race speaker. So we see Carreral sign on, Decathlon AG2R go towards the sign-on podium at Alhama de Murcia. Intermarché will be looking to try and deliver a result. There is Sepp Kuss, last year's Vuelta a España winner. He's starting his season where he left off last year in Spain. Let's have a little look at the route that the riders will take on today. 198.7 kilometers starting in Alhama de Murcia. They'll be heading down to the coast where they'll have the first of several intermediate sprints at Mazaron. 3, 2 and 1 points available. Then they'll head to the first categorized climb of the day, the third category, Alto de Aledo, 6.5 kilometers long, and that will lead them straight on to the first category climb of the Collado Bermejo. They'll make a long descent and they'll head towards Mula, the home of Luis Leon Sanchez, then to Molina de Segura, into Murcia, into the final king of the mountain of the day, the Alto Cresta del Gallo. There's the profile. The riders rolling out at 10:30 local time this morning. They had 10 kilometers of neutral section to warm the legs up, get themselves ready. It was a relaxed start, as you can see, under blue sky, patchy cloud, but it was a nice start. There is Groupama FDG at the front alongside them. Decathlon AG2R. It was an active start. Many riders trying to get themselves into the breakaway. There's the team of Movistar just at the back. There's Javier Romo, and Paul Lipero was very animated. He was really trying to force a breakaway. The 23-year-old Frenchman from Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial team. 9 riders managed to get themselves into a breakaway, including Matthias Norsgaard, the Dane from Movistar in the blue kit. Alongside him in the yellow jersey is Tosh van der Sander of Team Visma Lisa Bike. Arne Marit of Intermarché Wanty was in that breakaway. This is the results at Mazaron. Anthony Lopez taking 3 points ahead of Jorgensen, and Arne Marit picking up the 1 point. Also in that breakaway, Paul Lepera, who was, as I said before, very, very active and animated. Lopez in the iconic orange colours of Euskaltel Euskadi. Alongside them is Ward Van Hoof. Juan David Sierra, the young Italian rider from Tudor Pro Cycling. Thomas Gachinar of Total Energy, and Alex Molinar, the 24-year-old Dutchman of the Continental team, and the only Continental team here at the Tour of Murcia. Welcome to the 44th edition of the Vuelta Ciclista a la Región de Murcia, the 198.7 kilometre one-day race down in the south of Spain. We're going to join live pictures very shortly. We'll take a look at this magnificent countryside as we join with 61 kilometres remaining. This is the front of the race currently. Just at the back there, there's Arne Marit. We've had a rejoining, or a join of 2 groups. The pressure was applied on that first category climb, the Collado Bermejo. In the end, several riders were able to bridge across to the breakaway group. 2 riders were distanced earlier on. That was Sierra of Tudor Pro Cycling. He was distanced from the breakaway group, as was Lopez of Euskaltel Euskadi. It's a windy day out there. It's been playing havoc, really, because it was a fast start once they were racing down to the coast at Mazaron. They had that fast tailwind, and then they were into the headwind all the way up to the bottom of the first climb. They've had this cross tailwind for a while. This is the head of the race. Tim Wellens, Sepp Kuss, Tosh van der Sander, Matthias Jorgensen, Arne Marit here at the back for Intermarché Wanty. Also there is Danny Martinez, Paul Lepera, Ben O'Connor, Nicholas Prodom, Jefferson Cepeda. And the final rider from the original breakaway group, that's Thomas Gachinar of Total Energy. Two riders from Visma Lisa Bike. We'll have to get used to that. We're so used to saying Jumbo Visma. Visma Lisa Bike. Let's hear from Sepp Kuss. He's starting his season where he left off last year at the Vuelta a España. He's back on Spanish soil. Let's hear from the man from Durango.
Yeah, it was a nice way to end the season last year, and then to start back in Spain. Starting the season here is really nice. Yeah, it felt like a long time without racing, which it was, but yeah, looking forward to get going and get the feel of the racing again.
Did you feel that the victory at La Vuelta gave you another status and makes that the way you prepare the season differently, maybe?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, I think most of all, it just made me feel very, very calm. Not that it made me less motivated, but yeah, I could just do my work and prepare for this season, feeling like there was nothing more to do, nothing to prove, and yeah, I feel already really good, and yeah, it's just nice memories to look back on.
I think you have the first block of the season now with Murcia today, Jaén and Algarve, and then Catalonia.
Yeah.
What is the goal of this first block?
Yeah, just get the feeling of racing again. They're not races that are particularly suited to me, but that's almost better because I can go into them without any expectation really, and just really enjoy and try and help out the other guys that we have on the team. And for me, that's really nice, but mostly just to get the racing rhythm back.
And so just one last word about today. What's the plan? Trying to bring a sprinter at the finish line, is it possible?
We'll see. I think you know, there's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of strong sprinters, guys that can climb really well as well. So yeah, we have to see. We have to make the most of the course with the kind of team we have, but I think we have a lot of options for the final.
Plenty of options for the final for Visma Lisa bike. Sepp Kuss having his first winter as a Grand Tour winner. There's Matthias Norsgaard at the team car. He was part of the original breakaway of 9 riders. And you can just hear the wind buffeting off the camera motorbike microphones. You can see Cepeda in the white and green jersey, and you can just see how they're trying to ride in this wind on the left side. Well, thanks for joining us. It's the 44th edition of the Tour of Murcia. We've got a select group who have formed. 9 original breakaway riders. They were joined by the chasers behind, including Tim Wellham, Sepp Kuss, Nicola Prodhomme, Ben O'Connor and others. They've managed to join the 2 groups together. There is Sepp Kuss. Inside 60 kilometres remaining. We've done the first categorised climb down the other side onto the descent. Our next point on the road will be the intermediate sprint at Müller. My name's Hannah Walker. Alongside me is Pippa York. Pippa, good afternoon. We've got a real race on our hands here, and it's becoming, well, it's a difficult one. And you can see from the trees at the roadside just how demanding today is.
Good afternoon. I've been spoiled, but this is my first race of the year, and as you can see, it's going to be a very interesting final couple of kilometres here that are going to take place. As you can see, the winds obviously influenced this race, you know, right from the start, a bit of a headwind, and then, you know, the big group went away. It always kicked off on the climb, the first kind of climb, and now we've got 2 groups, and the kind of tactics of it are going to be really interesting. Behind, we've got, strangely enough, Movistar and Ineos are riding, probably because for Movistar they know that Norsgaard is, you know, probably going to get dropped from this group because he's been out there all day, and Ineos have strangely missed the move. So it should be an interesting battle between the Decathlon and Visma Lisa bike in the front, and we'll see how it develops. It's gone, but it's definitely influenced by this wind. You know, 40k an hour side wind is always going to blow the race apart, and it has.
Are you surprised that Movistar didn't have another rider that was able to follow in that group to then come and help with Matthias Norsgaard, especially when it all started to fragment towards the top of that first categorised climb at Collado Bermejo?
It is a bit surprising that they haven't been able to place somebody there. But, you know, if it's happened and the best climbers have ended up in the front, there's not really much they can do about it. And I think that's what we're seeing here, you know. So, you know, even though Will Barter won the race last week, you know, they're going to have to be a good climber to be in the front. So it's that type of race at Murcia where it's almost always won by somebody who can climb quite well or reasonably well, but they're also fast. And you know, looking at the list that Movistar have sent here, they don't really have anybody in that kind of category. They used to be able to rely on, of course, Alejandro Valverde. This used to be one of his races that he always won.
And of course, a home race for him. We're heading to his hometown of Murcia.
Yeah, so I think he's won this race. He won this race 4 times, and it suited his characteristics. Whereas they don't have that type of rider anymore. So they're in that kind of rebuilding process of finding out what kind of team they're going to be. If they're going to go with Enric Mas for the Grand Tours, or they're going to try and, you know, hopefully develop some of the younger riders to be one-day racers.
Within the squad of Movistar, they brought Jorge Arcas, Will Barter, who of course is in good form after his stage victory a week ago. In Valencia, Remy Cavagna, of course, making his debut in new team colours, the TGV of Clermont-Ferrand. Javier Romo, Gregor Mühlberger, Matthias Norsgaard, who you can just see here at the back, in Gonzalo Serrano. And you can start to see, Pippa, that it's been a long day out there with these weather conditions, with the wind that's been relentless. And for those who are the remnants of the breakaway,
yeah, you can see
it's going to start to tire.
Yeah, sorry. You can see Norsgaard's on the back, and he's obviously, you know, he's not going to pull in the front with his team chasing behind, and he probably knows that, you know, his days are numbered. So he'll be quite happy to sit on the back along with the Total Energies rider Gauchard. But everybody else is pulling through. So you know, the guys behind who are having to chase, they're up against probably, what, 8-9 riders who are really strong. So this is going to go on for a while.
Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial there in a strong position. They've got Paul Lepera, who was of the original breakaway. You can just see him there, number 83, the 23-year-old Frenchman. Ben O'Connor's in the group, along with Nicolas Prodhomme. They've got options there for Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial.
They certainly have, and they're almost sacrificing La Piero, you know, just to keep this break in the front. He's doing a lot of work, you know, he's filling in the gaps when other riders kind of miss a turn, so they're obviously sacrificing for Ben O'Connor, you know, later on.
Wonderful crowds as we pass through one of the small little towns. The sun's out, but it's not too warm. We're talking around 13, 14 degrees. Molina de Segura. Of course, that'll be the next location of the intermediate sprint. We've passed through Müller, of course, the home of Luis Leon Sanchez. Of course, no longer in the peloton anymore.
No, he's also one of the riders, I think he won this race at least 3 times, so it used to be, you can see he's that type of the punchy rider who can climb on his day, so it's definitely that type of course that I was thinking, you know, when looking at the start list, this is ideal for Tim Wellens, you know, that kind of rider that will pull all day, and he can climb, probably not with the best climbers, but he won't be far behind. And you know, after the first climb, there's a long section of downhill, kind of rolling downhill with uphill, little tiny uphill bits in it to kind of wear you out, and that's ideal for him.
Before the chasing group began to make the inroads to the breakaway, you'd already said, well, keep an eye on Tim Wellens for today. He's got a real good option in terms of the climbs and the attributes of the Belgian as a rider. And then one of the first riders to be making a move was indeed Tim Wellens, Pippa.
Yeah, he was, and you know, he's been in good form at the start of the year, like he is always. So one of those riders that comes into, you know, good condition very quickly. So it's no surprise to see him here, and he'll be happy in this position. No, he doesn't have to pull too much on the front. He can leave Decathlon and Visma to do the majority of the work, but, you know, not kind of shirk his turn so that they get annoyed with him.
Movistar on the front, just behind them is the Ineos Grenadiers, and of course they've got Ben Turner, the defending champion here 1 year ago. He's got number 1 on his back. If you're watching on the television, you're going to just leave us for a quick commercial break. If you're watching on digital, you'll stay with us. The Ineos Grenadiers, Pippa, with a real strong 7 riders here, with Ben Turner, as I said, the rider who won last year from that small sprint. Andrew August, the youngest rider in the race, only 18 years of age. Ethan Hayter, Michael Leonard, Michał Kwiatkowski, Salvatore Puccio and Omar Fraile. Another strong contingency.
Yes, and you have to wonder what happened to them, that they've managed to miss this break, and now they're committed to trying to pull it back. You would have thought that at least one of them, you know, would have made that group that rode across to the early break, but they found themselves chasing, and they're going to have a hard time to come back to the front.
Not being given a time gap as of yet to the front group at the head of the race. We see here a large group of riders. We just saw then the Castle of Müller. See that Fajardo Castle, one of the best known monuments of this area. It wasn't built for defensive purposes, but to demonstrate power and the supremacy of the Velez house, one of the most important of the 16th century. Bora Hansgrohe also in a very strong position here. They've of course got Sergio Higuita, Dani Martinez, who are in this breakaway group. You can just see here at the back, Martinez. Will there be, within this group here, with the different amounts of numbers, we've seen this on a couple of occasions so far, since we've seen the live images, Pippa, where there's been gaps start to open up, riders are looking at other teams, other rivals to try and pull in this group here. There's been, on a number of occasions, gaps start to open up, and we do still have some of the early breakaway riders within this group still.
Yeah, and they've kind of found themselves on the back now on all these little uphills, and this is kind of typical of the races in Murcia, that there's long kind of downhills where you're always pulling a big gear, and then suddenly you come out of a little village and there's a climb up and it just about kills you. And quite often they place, or gravel gets kicked up onto the side, from the side of the road onto the corner, so you have to pay attention to that as well, and that slows you down more, and then you're struggling up one of these kind of long drags as well.
Quite the characteristics of the descents too, with the gravel onto the descent. So you said that's one thing that you really have to be careful of, as we just start to see Arne Marit and Tosh van der Sanden now be distanced from this group.
Yeah, they're going to, certain of the teams are going to have to sacrifice riders to keep that gap to the peloton, the chase group. So on this type of terrain, if you pull really hard at the front and then you get those little kickers, you get dropped almost, you'll lose 20, 30 meters just in that initial kind of acceleration. So it's really hard to, keep pulling through when there's not enough of you to share the workload. But you can see it's not a big road, so even back in the peloton, there's, it's going to be a real struggle here because it's open, the wind's blowing from the right, and there'll be the same kind of chaos in the peloton, but on a bigger scale.
For some riders, this is their first race of the season, and with the weather conditions, with the wind, quite a shock to the system when you're already into almost echelons. You've got the buffeting crosswinds. We're talking of upwards of 50 kilometers per hour, the gusts of winds, and around 40 kilometers westerly, northwesterly wind.
Yeah, you can see here just from the way that in the front group, there's quite often, as you said before, they're all kind of 5 meters apart. For your first race, it's kind of difficult to go to Murcia because it's always windy and it's always kind of up and down, and it would certainly be a shock to a lot of riders if this is their first competition.
One of the riders in the front group is Ben O'Connor alongside his two teammates of Prodom and Lepera. He's come into the season with good form. Let's hear what the Australian has to say.
Yeah, it's been really warm actually, so it hasn't been too hard, and I think it's been pretty much untroubled. So I just have to be excited to start again the season. It's really busy from now until the Giro, so it kind of all rolls into one now.
And what does it mean about how you want to bring your shape into big? Is already a big goal starting this season now, or you have to be a bit more patient?
I don't really know if it's possible to do that slow, easy build nowadays. I think you have to be very good all the time, and hopefully you can then peak at the very, very top end of the Giro. But you have to be good every single race. That's what I'm paid to do, and that's what I want to do as well.
And so today could be a good one. It's a tough finish.
It's an interesting day because it has a little bit of everything. It's kind of flat, and then there's a big mountain, and then it's super windy, and there's a punchy finish. So it's kind of got a little bit of everything today.
this last climb can make the difference? Can you drop the sprinters like Arnaud Delis, the guy who can climb a bit?
I think the race will already be won maybe 50 kilometers before. It's going to be super windy, and I think that's what's going to make the race. And yeah, for sure the final climb is going to decide who's going to win, but it's going to be the crosswinds first that make the selection.
Are you looking forward? Do you like going in the crosswind, this kind of racing?
I mean, it's an interesting way to start the season, with a bit full on, but you have to take it as it comes. And yeah, I just want to start now.
Well, it started, and it started well for his first race of 2024 for Ben O'Connor. He's found himself in that front group, and with strength within his team of Decathlon AG2 Mondial with Lepera and Prodom. You can see even for incredibly strong riders who really thrive in classic type conditions, Pippa, Norsgaard is starting to be distanced now. That'll leave Movistar without any riders within that front group. Tosh van der Sande trying to come back, having gone back to the car, but you can see how quickly gaps start to open up and how much, as you go back to this front group, Arne-Marit, Norsgaard and Martinez have got themselves back in.
Yeah, they were just, so Danny Martinez just kind of missed the wheels when he came back from his pulling on the front, and found themselves at 10 metres for probably 500 metres of that little climb, and it cost him a lot of energy to come back again. And quite often in that situation, you find yourself in the gutter thinking you're going to get a rest. You miss a couple of turns, you think, yeah, I'll have a rest on the bike, but it's actually easier just to keep riding through. And that keeps you out the gutter, so you're not lost in that kind of situation. You don't find yourself at 10 metres and spending maybe 500 metres trying to come back, and that really hurts. And you see there, Tosh van der Sande at the end of his day, he's radioed in and said he's done. So he'll report what's happening back in the peloton to the guys up front.
That will leave Sepp Kuss on his own in this front group. Will that perhaps cause some alarm bells from behind for Visma Lease Bike? The fact that Laura Hansgrohe have got and had strength within this group. Also the French team in the light blue and white jersey as Arne-Marit just tries to gain a little bit more shelter onto the right-hand side. He doesn't want to go through. He wants to try and save. You can see that, how he's just scuttling around.
Yeah, you can see Murray wanted, actually easier, like I said, actually easier to ride through in those situations and find yourself stuck in the gutter and really, really suffering. So from riding in Belgian races, it's best just to go through, even if you're not applying the pressure that much. Just go through, roll through, and you won't find yourself kind of pinned in the gutter like Morgans is going to find himself in a minute. I think, in the case of Sepp Kuss, I think he's looking strong enough to, just to keep riding. It's in his interest to do that. Otherwise, as soon as a rider of his caliber starts to sit on, the kind of cohesion in the group will just disappear.
And we've seen before that Sepp Kuss is good in riding in these conditions. We think back to the Vuelta last year as just pulls out of the gap there, leaves Tim Wellens to close to Danny Martinez. He's good in these conditions, but you can feel and get a sense in this group now that not everyone is fully committed. They're perhaps afraid of what's to come. The gap at 150 to this peloton that's now being led with Movistar on the front, with Remy Cavagna and Groupama FDJ have now decided to put some riders up towards the front. Likewise with Lotto Destiny. Now they've got a very interesting game plan. They've got Arnaud Delis. He's just come back from a training camp on Mount Teide. We should just see the results in Müller, Lepera ahead of Prodom and O'Connor. Three riders from Decathlon AG2 Mondial taking the 3, 2 and 1 points in the intermediate sprint competition. We've been seeing that Remy Cavagna's been on the front trying to pull in his first day in Movistar colours, Pippa.
Yeah, and he's got almost a 2-minute gap now to close, so he's going to have a good workout today.
And I guess for Cavagna, this is He's going to be a crucial part in trying to bring this gap down. Let's have a quick word with Rémi Cavagna. What's it going to be like racing for the first time in your new colours? It's true, it's my first race. I've been looking forward to it after a lot of training. But now it's time to put a race number on, and it's a real pleasure, especially in Spain. It's the first time I've done these races. So it's nice to discover the calendar. What's it like being in Spain with Movistar? It's a bit like that. Of course, I'm learning Spanish. It's compulsory for me, so that's an extra motivation. In Spain, it's always good to get a good result because we've got a great team. We'll see how the legs respond after 2 weeks training in Sierra Nevada to do a bit of altitude. But in any great race, how are the legs responding? We know it's difficult during the race, but the legs respond well to the training. But it's like a lot of the riders, they do well in training, and then in a race, that's when you really see the results of training or not. I've changed coached, I've changed a lot of things. It's going to be special to start, but I'm feeling good. The Movistar team did well with Will Barter's 2 victories last weekend. What's the plan for today? We definitely started well in all the races. It's a great motivation for us. You'll have to be careful with the wind. It's quite tricky. You'll have to be in front from the first difficulty and that first descent, then concentrate on the last difficult part of the course. We'll want to put someone in the front, but we recognise the end. It's not going to be easy.
Puis après, on va voir un petit peu parce qu'on a reconnu le final, c'est pas facile. Ouais, je pense
Can sprinters like Arnaud Delis pass?
Pas tous, mais certains, ouais.
Yeah, I think he can pass. Not all, but some. Can we arrive in a sprint? Yes, but in small groups, because there's a technical descent of 8 kilometers before the finish. It'll go quickly. Not just any sprinter can hang on. We've seen, Pippa, that Arnaud Delis can climb exceptionally well for a sprinter, and of course, bringing to the finish line, there's very few people who can beat the young Belgian.
That's true. The problem now is he's in this group at 2 minutes, and there's not many teams really committed enough to bring this back. They're the kind of, if you didn't make that front group that rode across to the early break, then it means that you're suffering now. So I think I can see this group going to the finish. They're back in the peloton. It's not really organised enough. If they were riding the way you see in the front here, everybody's in a line. All pulling through. Whereas back in the peloton, there's 2 guys from a team come to the front and start riding, and then another 2 from another team. So there's no kind of real cohesion on that chase because they're burning through riders, which happens at this time of year because everybody's form is at a different stage.
Different stage. The only rider in this group for UAE is Tim Wellens. Ten riders at the head of the race: Tim Wellens, Sepp Kuss, Matthias Norsgaard, Arnaud Marit, Danny Martinez, Paul Lepera, Ben O'Connor, Nicola Prodom, Jefferson Cepeda and Thomas Garchinat. At what point from the group behind Pippa does Movistar say, or Ineos Grenadiers say to other teams, well, you've also got a very strong rider who has the potential to take a victory here. We need some help. The gap is at just over 2 minutes with 60 kilometers to go.
Yeah,
and we've seen, despite them riding, they haven't really been able to eat at the gap of these 10 leaders.
No, I think they'd be asking for a miracle, for the other teams to start riding. They're just kind of watching what Ineos won this race last year, so they're kind of in that base of the defending champions, and they've missed the break. Movistar are going to ride because they're the big Spanish team, and it's expected that they take control or some control of the race. They'll be really interested in getting a result, and everybody else is just kind of going to sit back and look what happens. And for Lotto Destiny, they'd quite like it to be a sprint, so they're only going to commit to it when they can see there's a chance of getting the win. Coffee just as well. They've missed the break. They're not going to really commit to any riders to chase in in the peloton. And as I said, 2 minutes is to a really strong group in the front of 10 riders. It's going to be difficult.
And of course, we've got that last climb for the riders. They'll crest the top with 11.9 kilometers to go, the Alto Cresta de Gallo. It's a third category climb. It's 4.3 kilometers long, average gradient of 6.6%. It's certainly not an easy pass for the riders, and a good opportunity for those climbers to ensure that any sprinters or any fast men don't get over the climb.
Yeah, and here back in the peloton, they've just reached that corner where we saw Tim Wellens just kind of struggling with the side windowing, so he's got probably 50 mil rims on his wheels. So in a side wind that catches a lot of the gas, so it's quite tricky in that kind of situation. And you can see there's a bit of panic here, just trying to sort themselves out. Everybody's kind of scrabbling for some shelter.
Is that something that would have also been discussed this morning with mechanics? Perhaps a quick change of equipment in terms of which wheels they wanted to use today, especially given the fact the majority of the race today is with a crosswind.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But sometimes they don't have all the options.
Of course.
But you think a 50 mil. It's almost like a sail today with 50 millimeter rim. So probably go down to something like 30, 35, something like that. That would be a bit easier. But you can see from from these shots, there's no real forest around here. It's always windy, and it's the driest place in Spain. So it is going to be side wind, and you're going to have to be confident in dealing with that.
Very little opportunity for any shelter, respite, recovery. It's exposed, and the wind blows across the dry farmland.
You just see Sepp Kuster, number 21, just repositioning himself from the back because he gets caught in the side wind. So, a smart move there is, you maybe thought, I'll miss a couple of turns because I'm starting to hurt. But, staying last man on some of these corners isn't going to be a really kind of safe option. It's going to hurt back there. I think so far I've been really impressed with Paulo Lapierra. He was a member of the original break, and he's still pulling on the front really strongly. So he's obviously doing a really good job for Ben O'Connor later on.
And interesting that they've got 3 riders, the strongest team here in terms of the amount of numbers they've got within this front group. 10 riders in this front group, 3 of them from Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial team. And for Paul Lapierra, having been in that early breakaway, well, it's clearly come out of his winter training incredibly strong.
Yeah, and quite often he's pulling on the front, and he takes 3-4 meters, and you can see now that Tim Wellens is looking to miss a couple of turns and asking what's happened, because everybody's getting tired and it becomes slightly tactical. But quite often, if you've ridden across to that early escape, you pick up riders who are tired and they miss turns, and it's kind of slightly annoying, but it's one of those things they can sit on because they've been out there all day.
We always hear of riders coming off the back of training camps, and the numbers are good, the training's gone well, I felt good in training, but it's a very different proposition to when you pin a number on and you're in a racing scenario. But clearly for some riders, they've come out of that period well, and it's only once you do get back to racing, Pippa, that you can really see the benefit of all that training you've done.
Yeah, and the thing about training, you can replicate some efforts, but you can't replicate being in the gutter for 2 or 3 kilometers at a time at your maximum heart rate. Kind of just dangling, trying to stay on the front, stay on that wheel in front. So it's possible to recreate some of the kind of situations, but you don't have the same nervousness, and you don't have the kind of same level of fatigue and that sense of danger and excitement that you get in a race.
I guess for some who have got their eyes set on the classics, which of course will be fast approaching, 2 weeks today, we've got Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. For those, they'll feel right at home in a race like this. You take a look at Lewis Askey on the front here in the blue jersey for Groupama FDG, a big focus on the classics, and especially towards the back end. Ben Turner, of course, who won here 1 year ago. Big focus on the classics, especially towards the back end of the classics with Flanders and Roubaix. They'll be thriving in these kind of conditions, albeit they'll be hoping that that time gap will continue to start to fall, as now we get the time gap 1 minute and 35 to that peloton, 54 kilometers remaining.
Yeah, those big strong riders, the Dutch, the Belgians, guys like who are motivated for the kind of Belgian and Northern French classics. They love this stuff because on the flat here in the side wind, the smaller riders who can climb really well and would usually hurt them, they're hanging on in the gutter. So when you come to a climb, it kind of slows down enough for the bigger riders to get over it quite easily. And then as soon as it starts going down again, they set off, and then and everybody's in the gutter again. So they kind of love this stuff.
As a slight rider, when you're being buffeted by the wind, some thrive, some really struggle, don't they?
Yeah, you can. I think you can see that with Danny Martin. So you see Danny Martinez, he keeps losing a couple of meters, always having to struggle to close gaps. And when that starts happening to you, you kind of lose a little bit of motivation, and you kind of it hurts your legs almost instantly, and then you kind of know that maybe you're not going to win that day. But he's got no option but to stay in that group as long as he can. And you can see, Sepkus just struggling to get something to eat. That's how difficult it is in these conditions. You're almost you place yourself in a little bit of danger just trying to get a drink or trying to get something to eat.
But it's a big balance, isn't it? Knowing you need to get some fluids down you, some food, some gels, but knowing that you don't want to do it at the cost of losing the wheel and having to chase. If you're watching on the television, you're going to leave us for a quick commercial break. Make sure you join us once we come back. And if you're watching on the digital platforms, you get uninterrupted coverage here. You can see all of the coverage and plenty of races on today too. .52 kilometers to go. 1 minute and 34 seconds is the time gap to the very reduced peloton behind of around 55, 60 riders. Let's hear from one of the riders in the breakaway, Danny Martinez.
Bien, contento. Digamos que conociendo la nueva escuadra, pero bien.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm feeling good.
Bien. Hemos pasado 2 training camps. Llevamos uno en octubre y otro en diciembre, adaptándome a los nuevos compañeros, al nuevo equipo, a la nueva estructura. Y de momento todo muy bien.
Everything's good between me and my teammates too.
Sí, hoy es una carrera complicada que puede pasar de todo. Yo vengo bien, así que intentaremos ganar. Esa es la idea del equipo, así que bueno, vamos con toda hoy.
¿Cómo hacer para ganar? ¿Es más para la última subida o es más con el viento?
No, yo creo que las dos van a influir demasiado. Yo creo que el viento va a ser un factor importante hoy.
Muchas gracias.
It could be a complicated finish, but the team's feeling good. It seems that Danny Martinez is happy, Pippa.
Yeah, change of teams.
Change of teams, of course.
Change of motivation, a slightly different setup, so it's quite often it's a kind of, you get to kind of refresh your ideas, you've learned some new things. He's probably going to have to learn some, a bit of new language as well. And, that'll keep him occupied, and he can settle into Bora and see what happens. Obviously, in these races, he has a really good opportunity, but later on he'll be working for Primož Roglič.
Take your opportunities when they're presented to you, and of course can still continue to learn. Now, of course, they've had that big arrival of Primož Roglič within Bora Hansgrohe. For everybody, it's that next step up, isn't it?
Yeah, that changes the kind of, the outlook for the whole squad, that it becomes a little bit more professional. they enter, you know, these races with more motivation, with more expectation. So it kind of raises the level of everybody.
Welcome back to television viewers. The gap coming down to 1 minute and 22. You can just see the whiteboard being shown to the leading group of 10 riders inside 50 kilometers to go now.
Yeah, we saw, you know, a couple of minutes ago they lost a little bit of cohesion as everybody's kind of trying to refuel and grab a drink, grab something to eat before the last hour, and you know, they probably lost 10 seconds just in that little space of you know, confusion about who's going to pull on the front, because everybody wants to kind of take a break and grab some nutrition.
They'll have a little bit of respite as now Arne Marit is calling for the team car behind. They'll have some respite in the next couple of kilometers because they'll take a right-hand turn, then they'll head towards Molina de Segura. They'll have a tailwind there all the way into the next intermediate sprint that will come. That's the penultimate intermediate sprint of the day. Refreshment for Arne Marit, who took a second place on one of the stages last week in Valencia. And it'll be a welcome to have that respite from the crosswind that they've been in for the last 30 kilometers or so.
Yeah, it's been almost full crosswind for that last, half hour or so. And now it's turned into more of a headwind. So I imagine, you know, back in the peloton, if they can get organised, they'll start to pull some of the time back on this big road where they can actually, you know, get more riders riding on the front.
And you can see just how small this peloton is that's chasing behind. And for some teams, they've got very little resources in terms of strength in numbers.
Yeah, you know, so we can see the yellow jerseys of Visma Lease bike, you know, just kind of watching what's happening. You know, they're quite happy with Sepp Kuss in the front, but everybody else is kind of all spread out everywhere.
There's a couple of jerseys there for Lotto Destiny. Here they are. You can just see Jasper de Bois just moving up. There's Arne de Lee. He will be looking to try and win today's race. He's feeling good. He's had a good training camp. Let's hear from the Belgian.
Arnaud, dites-nous comment ça va? La saison débute, comment on se sent?
How are things going at the start of the season? I'm really looking forward to it. I live for these races, and getting a race number back on in the good weather, it's always a pleasure. For you, is today a training race, or is it a training race for Almeria, or is it a goal? It would be a shame to come here without a goal. There's something to be done. It's going to be a complicated race, and it's going to be complicated to be here, but we're in good condition. We're going to give it our best shot for a sprint in Murcia. Do you think that the last climb that comes 11 kilometers from the finish is good for your characteristics? It's 4 kilometers, 4.5 kilometers at 6%. It's already a nice climb, 10 minutes of effort. You have to have great legs directly from the beginning if you have an objective to pass there. The descent is technical, and we quickly arrive in Murcia. The climb's essential. If I don't pass, it will be difficult to come back. How well do you know your program? What's the idea for your increase in power? Is it already important to perform from the start of the season when it's better to reserve yourself for slightly more distant objectives? I think the form is already good, but Murcia and Almeria are targets. There are possibilities of winning, but it's certainly not a big objective. It's more than 2 weeks, and with Het Nieuwsblad and the races which will follow. Well, a good idea, and I guess as a sprinter, whenever they pin a number on Pippa, that the objective is always to win. The goal is always to cross the line first, and it generally comes hand in hand with the characteristics of a sprinter.
Yeah, as soon as they have that number, they start to believe somehow. They're always quite optimistic usually. You know, that quite often, you know, sprinters be quite guarded about how they feel. But you know, the lead there, he seemed quite happy. You know, saying he's in good form and things like that. So you will see. You know, that for the moment it looks like the break's coming by. There's just a little bit too much confusion. They're obviously getting tired, and the kind of that cohesion that they need to survive to the finish is kind of going out of this front group.
Well, it's not surprising that being one of the strongest teams in this position in this front group, that Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial team are wanting to try and push on and try and keep the cohesion within this front group. Sepp Kuss trying to bridge across. Danny Martinez of Bora Hansgrohe in his new team colours trying to come back to Kuss. But you've got this combination, and you can really start to see it now visibly. This combination of riders who have been in that early breakaway where Norsgaard, he still feels like he's got something, and you look at the speed there, 63 kilometers per hour. There's some tired legs starting, and not everybody has something to contribute.
No, and you see, you know, even Ben Turner's pulling on the front now back in the peloton, and when they reach that same part of road that we've just seen the front group go through, there's going to be a complete chaos there with those bends, and the side wind reappeared. So nobody's really comfortable in here. You know, even if you've got a rider to look after you, like probably like Arnaud Delis has with Jasper de Boost, you're still going to find yourself in the wind quite a lot of the time, and you will get tired of it.
It's not easy to keep that protection, especially when in the peloton, the majority of the time that we've seen the helicopter shot, it's been in one long line. As we just see at the back here, number 91, this is Jesus Soto, the 29-year-old. He's one of 3 previous winners here at the Tour of Murcia.
And also at this time, you know, at this time of year, not everybody's honed their skills of holding a wheel on the, you know, in these kind of conditions. So you're still kind of sharpening up your responses, and this type of race you'll be mentally frazzled by the end of it. You know, if you've had to follow, and then you've got you know, if you get dropped, you've got a bit of a recovery. But if you have to kind of hang in there and keep riding, then by the time you get to the finish, you're worn out, you know, physically and mentally. This looks like Tim Wellens and Ben O'Connor. So obviously Tim Wellens is feeling good.
Tim Wellens of UAE Team Emirates just trying to push on here with Ben O'Connor, the Australian. They don't want to leave it to chance. They don't want any games or messing around, especially when they'll be hearing in their race radio and their team radios, Pippa, that the gap's coming down to the peloton. They've been persistent in trying to bring back the leaders, and they know they're in such a good position here.
Yeah, they are. You know, they may not have the sparkle left in their legs for that last climb. So, you know, if they get that far, when there's only the two of them, you know, the 2-to-1 chance of winning. So, you know, they're going to keep pulling through, and you can see the way that Tim Wellens is pulling on the front here. He's kind of fully committed to this now.
Both Tim Wellens and Ben O'Connor, first races of the season. Neither of this duo did the races down under. They've not done any of the early season races at Challenge Mallorca. It's left to one of the early breakaway riders, Thomas Gachinard, to try and get a little bit more cohesion within this chasing group here.
And they're all starting to look at each other, so you know, they're tired. You know, the kind of terrain and the speed and the up and down and the kind of nervousness of it is obviously got to them. And you know, Sepp Kuss has found himself on the front, and nobody else seems to want to ride with him.
What does Sepp Kuss and Visma Leasebike do at this point now? Because Kuss tried to bridge across initially when this duo started to make that acceleration. If he's not really got any help behind within that group, does Visma Lease a Bike start to contribute from the peloton group, or is it a gamble?
No, I think, you know, back in the peloton, Visma can sit back and just watch what Ineos are doing with the Movistar, and then, you know, pounce when if it does come back. But you know, for the moment, they can just, you know, leave it as it is and see how it develops.
"40 kilometers remain of the 44th edition of the Tour of Murcia. 2 riders have broken away from the leading group of 10. Tim Wellens of UAE Team Emirates and Ben O'Connor of Decathlon Étoile Mondiale team. Both riders making their debut for the 2024 season.
And you can see there from that flag cross tailwind, so nowhere to hide really. You know, it's going to be fast from here all the way to the finish.
The first opportunity that they can have some shelter from the buildings here in the town. We're heading to Molina de Segura. The wind will find its way through and funnel its way through the buildings. And again, as I said before, that you've got that tailwind, so the respite from the pounding crosswind that they've had. The chasing group behind, around 15-16 seconds behind the leading duo. And still making inroads is the peloton, which seems to have swelled in size. Just at the back here, number 33, that's Remy Cavagna. He's been doing an awful lot of work for Movistar. His first day on the job with Movistar in his new team colours. There he is, the TGV of Clermont-Ferrand.
Yeah, this is going to be a real shock to the system for a lot of the riders. You can see Max Chapman there on the back, and you know, he's struggling as well. And he's a really good, quality rider, and he's kind of stuck at the back here, and he's not going to be able to move up for probably a long time until,
Well, this duo are fully committed. Tim Wellens on the front here in the white jersey of UAE Team Emirates was the only rider of UAE Team Emirates in that leading group. They've got options for the riders behind for UAE Team Emirates. They've got 2 riders from the development team. They've got Jonathan Guatibonza, the Colombian rider, 19 years of age, and also Luca Giami. Both riders, 19 years of age, both coming from the development team. And of course, they've got Alessandro Corvi, who won this race 2 years ago.
I think the problem, back in the peloton is that it's a case of survival for a lot of the riders. So, even if their sprinters some of the sprinters do make it, they're going to be frazzled by this, this constant, back and forth in the peloton.
One man who's back to defend his win from last year is Ben Turner.
Yeah, I don't really know where the form is. Come off a long camp now, straight to come here, and yeah, we'll see. But I felt good in training, but the race is sometimes different. But we'll see.
Will it be all about that last climb?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of climbers here, so just be always on their wheel up there, and we'll see. Hopefully it comes down to a sprint and we can do something there.
Last year, so you won here, and then you got a really good result in Hainan as well.
Yeah.
Is the plan of this year a bit different, or is it the same to be in good shape from the start of the season?
Yeah, it's definitely to be in good shape from the start. The focus is the classics, the end of the classics, Roubaix and that kind of thing, but I think you have to start in a good place. But hopefully it'll be a good start today.
We wish you.
How important is it, Pippa? We just hear there from Ben Turner that you want to try and start off well, especially when you take a look towards the classics. In your first races of the season, how important is that just mentally to come in, feel good, have a good race, and not feel like you're completely on the back foot?
The thing about the early races is There's riders who come into form really quickly, and if you're not training, you're not kind of training where your objective is going to be the classics, then in the first races you are going to struggle at certain times in that kind of top end efforts, but you need to feel strong. So you have to have that kind of inner feeling, yeah, I feel strong, okay, I don't have the top end power, but do I feel strong in myself, and do I realize, does your body feel like it's going to develop a little bit more, as you kind of ride yourself into the races and the season progresses. So the important thing is to, have that feeling of strength and kind of feel healthy, and not feel like you're on your limit straight away. Obviously you will be on, eventually, if you're not in super form, you won't be able to follow certain moves, but you have to feel like there's something there to give, and not just kind of be hanging on the back like sometimes you are kind of later in the year when you're worn out.
And I guess in this, what we could say, a new era of cycling is you always have to have good form. You can't really, as a rider, afford to have these training races per se anymore.
No, you can't rock up here and think this is going to be easy. 50 kilometers an hour on the side wind isn't, in any way, comfortable for anybody. So quite often these races are a shock, and you realise what's kind of missing from your training, from your form. But it might not be an objective then.
The peloton going through Molina de Segura, around just to the west of Murcia. They'll have this fast tailwind that'll take them into Murcia itself. That'll be where the final intermediate sprint will be. Then they'll head out, do a loop that will include that final climb of the day up to the Alta Cresta del Gallo. And then they'll loop back round and head into the finish, and will be a headwind finish.
So we still got Tim Wellens and Ben O'Connor in the front, and the group they left there, it looks like it's splitting up. So that some of them will go back, and some of them will insist. But it looks like two of them are ridden trying to come across here, and everybody else resigned to they're going to go back to the peloton. And then a whole different kind of set of circumstances will start. If Sepp Kuss goes back, then Visma Lease Bike are obviously going to have kind of reassess what's happened, but they're going to wait until they actually see him, and then they'll decide what they're going to do, because it looks like they've got 4 riders still in that chase group in the peloton.
Matthias Norsgaard has been distanced from this chasing group. Of course, he was part of that early breakaway. He's gone back to the peloton and is helping his squad of Movistar. Likewise with Paul Lepera, he's gone back to the peloton. If you're watching on the television, we'll see you in a moment. He's a powerhouse, isn't he, Norsgaard? He's still got something left to give. You can see Gregor Mühlberger there, the Austrian champion, just in his silhouette. There you can see the yellow and black jerseys of Team Visma Lease Bike. Lewis Askey still towards the front for Groupama FDG, the man from Canuck. There's Mikhail Kwiatkowski of the Ineos Grenadiers. There's Will Barter. And of course, in good form, the man from the USA, taking his first victory of the season last week, and in some fine style. We've continued to lose riders, Pippa, from this peloton, because when you take a look down from this camera shot, it's started to thin out.
Yeah, it looks like they've lost probably 5 or 6 riders from the back there. So yeah, you can kind of struggle and come back, and you're in the cars, and it's okay. But then you get back to the peloton, and you're pinned on the side of the road, no real shelter, and another uphill, and you're back in the cars again if you're lucky.
Only around 12 seconds, because the peloton will have that first chasing group in their sights. Only around 12 seconds between those two groups. That will mean that it's just if it all comes back together, only two riders out front with Wellens and O'Connor. Here's Ben Turner, last year's winner, with number 1 on his back. Just trying to come back through the cars. Now through the other side of Molina de Segura on this wide exposed section of road. It is a good opportunity now you've left the town behind if you need to go back to the team car.
Yep, you know, the experienced riders will choose a road like this, you know, slightly uphill. They'll go back in, you know, and the sticky bottle will appear from the window, you know, and they'll take their feet then if they, you know, and that's part of the kind of learning curve of you know, becoming a professional rider.
A stretch of the back for Sepp Kuss. They realise this group, it's all coming back together, and we'll see a change. It'll be good to see what the time gap is for our leading duo as it stands currently. The junction's made by Gregor Mühlberger. The 6 riders are caught. It leaves 2 out front with an advantage at the top we're seeing of 1 minute and 29 seconds. Welcome back to the Tour of Murcia. It's all change. The 6 chasers have been caught. The group which was with Sepp Kuss, Danny Martinez, that's all come back together. They've been absorbed by the peloton. We've got 2 leaders out front in Tim Wellens and Ben O'Connor. They've got an advantage of 1 minute and 32 seconds over this peloton. 30 kilometers remaining. They're heading for Murcia. And these two have really got the bit between their teeth, because they've got good cohesion here, Pippa, and they're not making this easy for the peloton to try and bring back the breakaway.
No, you can just see from the body language there that, you know, Tim Wellens there's no stopping him riding so hard. I imagine Ben O'Connor's not really enjoying this very much on this kind of terrain. Long downhills, where you have to pull that really big gear. Tim Wellens is an element, and it'll be a bit of a learning curve for Ben O'Connor to be in this situation. Even though he's a really strong rider, you have to remember 4th at Tour de France and a stage winner. It's not really his terrain. You know, if it was more uphill, he'd probably be a bit more comfortable. But this is all the kind of things that he needs to, you know, develop.
We've got these series of roundabouts, and you can just see how much faster that Tim Wellens is able to take these little pinch points in the road, and it leaves Ben O'Connor having to chase. They've got around 7.5 kilometers of tailwind here. Now Ben O'Connor comes round and tries to offer his breakaway companion some assistance. Is this an opportunity for this duo to make the most of this tailwind section before they head back into Murcia, where the wind direction will change? They'll do that little loop where they'll head towards that final king of the mountain of the day.
I think here, you know, we can see the gap seems to be up again, you know, and probably another 15 seconds or so. So, back in the peloton, there's probably kind of a reassessment of who's going to chase or who's going to kind of fully commit to this, because, you know, Movistar won't want to pull all the time on the front, but not when they see the Visma Lease bike riders just kind of sitting there, you know, 10th position, just watching what's happening. So there's going to be kind of a regrouping of what happens. You know, Lotto Destiny put Jasper de Boost up to the front to work with the Movistar riders. So they're obviously believing that Arnaud Dully can get over the last hill, and it'll be a sprint. But everybody else will be kind of, you know, looking at what's happening and kind of trying to assess if Wellens and Ben O'Connor are going to stay in the front. You know, they're certainly strong enough to ride these last 30 kilometres as a duo. It's just, is there going to be enough of a reaction behind to close them down?
It's not out of the ordinary, especially when we see the victory of Will Barter a week ago, that a breakaway can hold off the peloton despite it chasing, and especially from a long way out, because when you see what Will Barter did in Valencia last week, he made his move with over 45 kilometers remaining, and despite the chase, still managed to hold off.
Yeah, and you have to remember also that we're not even halfway through February, so not everybody has got the, this is almost 200 kilometers. Not everybody's got the form and the kind of stamina to do that in a race, at race pace. So even though you might still be able to hang on, you won't be able to pull on the front. You can see here with Ben Turner, he defending champion for this race, and he's struggling to come back.
He's been in the cars for a while, hasn't he, trying to come through, and the commissaires, they're not allowing the team cars to come through just to offer any shelter for him to use the cars to come through.
And the way it's just it's almost in one line, the whole group, so there's a lot of stress amongst that group.
Q36.5, the team car just moving up there. They've got a strong duo of riders, including Nicolo Parasini, the Italian. Gianluca Brambilla was in a good position earlier on. Also within that squad, David Dela Cruz, Mark Donovan, Tobias Ludvigsen, Rory Townsend making his debut in his new team colours. Take a look over Murcia. All the team buses parked up on the left-hand side. They'll head towards that intermediate sprint very shortly. Reach that point in just over a kilometre's time. Of course, Murcia, the home of Alejandro Valverde. He's not here though, he's in the Tour of Colombia, missing his home race. But the crowds have, nevertheless, they've come out in force.
There'll be a lot of riders in that when the peloton comes along, looking at those team buses and thinking, if only I was, in the next group, already dropped, I wouldn't have to hang on here. So, they look quite invited when you're hanging on in a bunch.
A wonderful reception from the crowds. Whilst not in the same direction, at least the riders, the peloton, will get a little opportunity to see what they'll be racing in towards into the finish, because of course in 24 kilometers time we'll be heading back across this narrow bridge into the finish line in the opposite direction. A good opportunity, especially if it does all come back together and you've got a larger group coming in, and it's not out of the ordinary. We have seen a sprint of a small group last year, for example, when Ben Turner won ahead of Simon Clark and Jordi Meus. And Jordi Meus, whilst it's a different finish than we had a year ago, proof that the sprinters can get over those climbs. 2 years ago, it was Alessandro Covi who won solo, the man from UAE Team Emirates. Antonio Jose Soto, he won solo in 2021. Luis Leon Sanchez solo in 2018. Alexander Krieger at the back here, the German rider for Tudor Pro Cycling. And now they've got an interesting team here, because you can just see a couple of riders ahead. There's Matteo Trentin, number 177. He can climb well. It's a climb, this final climb, where he can handle that type of gradient, that type of climb, and then of course a fast man for the finish too.
It looks like there's a slight headwind, gone through in this direction, so that means it's going to be a tailwind for the sprint when they come back in the other direction, so that the riders who think they're going to be strong enough, they're going to take note of that.
Two riders out front. 1 minute and 35 seconds is the advantage for Welland and O'Connor. 22 kilometres remaining. They'll head out onto that smaller loop now. Head towards that third and final classified climb of the day. It's a third category, Alto Cresta del Gallo. How much time can this peloton take out of the duo who are out front?
You know, at the moment, Wellington O'Connor seem to be kind of got it stabilised at 1:35 or thereabouts. So they've got 6 kilometres to the start of that last climb. I think they'll be happy, you know, if they can reach it with you know, a minute and a half, because you know, back in the peloton, certain riders are going to disappear. All those guys have been pulling, so you know, it's going to be up to the people who think that they're going to be up for the win to do something then and try and ride across. But you know, I think that Wayland will be quite happy with a minute and a half at the bottom of the last climb.
A minute and a half, and just touching on almost 1 minute and 40. Is that doable to the finish line to hold off a peloton, including that climb?
It certainly is for Tim Wellington. You know, when you look at his kind of body language today, he's looking strong and looking committed.
Let's hear from Matteo Trentin.
The new team is really well. I'm really happy. Season so far, I raced Marseille 15 days ago. It was actually a nice race, pretty hard, and today I think we expect just the same.
Coming from UAE, one of the big team, how can you judge this Team Tudor? Quite a young team. How do you?
Yeah, it's a really young team, pretty new, because actually it was from 2 years ago, but let's say last year was the first full season as a Tour de Pro cycling. It's a really ambitious team. It will take time to get on the top level, but that's where they want to go, and I'm here for helping them to reach that point.
And today, what are you here for?
Try to win as first, but of course the race is going to be hard with Collado Bermejo first, and then the last climb before the finish, which suits maybe a little bit better some climbers. But yeah, let's see. I was also in the front in the past, even with this parcours, so let's hope to make it again.
He was in the front in the past when it was on this very same parcours. You can sense that confidence from the Italian Matteo Trentin, and of course coming with a strong group of riders within their squad.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that everybody seems optimistic, you know, before the start. You know, whether he's feeling quite so optimistic now that he's in the peloton and he's had that. You know, the race has been really hard. You know, this is a harder edition than the last couple of times that we've had the race. So you know, we'll have to see what kind of condition, what shape he's in as he hits the last climb. It's certainly been traumatic for a lot of riders. You know, there's only probably 35, 40 riders in that chase peloton, so that kind of shows you how much stress there's been on the race.
And there you can see just how much damage has been done to that peloton and just how small it is. Intermarché, Wanty still with a couple of riders in that group. Also there is Bora Hansgrohe. Just at the back of this group is João Bau, number 113 in that orange jersey, the iconic orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi. And of course, a week ago we were racing in his home city of Valencia.
And you can see it's not like a normal pro race where all the teams get organised before the next kind of crucial point. You've only really kind of got Visma Lisa bike who are, you know, kind of sticking together, and Movistar on the front who are obviously riding, but everybody else is kind of left to their own devices, of individuals kind of scattered here and there. So that kind of says that, you know, there's a lot of tired bodies here.
Well, we just had a confirmation of our first categorised climb of the day that we saw, the third category Alto de Aledo. Tosh van der Sande taking the 3 points, Alex Molenaar, the Dutchman, taking the 2, and Arne Marit with the 1 point. 4 riders there for Visma Lisa bike. Intermarché, Wanty with 2 riders. Auto Destiny with 2 riders, likewise with the Ineos Grenadiers. We haven't seen as of yet whether Ben Turner managed to get himself back into the peloton. Just at the back here, that's the German rider Max Schachmann. There's a little bit of a replay from earlier on of Van der Sande, Molenaar and Arne Marit going across that third category climb, taking the points. Of course, that was much, much earlier in the day. That was 119 kilometers to go. Gregor Mühlberger has found himself back on the front for Movistar, the Austrian champion. They'll be approaching the base of the climb very shortly, and the climb itself, Pippa, the lower slopes are relatively nice, and it gradually gets harder and harder and steeper, and you see the gradients really rise.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Tim Wellens has left Ben O'Connor on the front just to see how fresh he is as he goes up here. It's not a big road. It'll be slightly bumpy, so he's going to watch him and see how fresh he is.
The leading duo, Ben O'Connor and Tim Wellens, are on to the Alto Cresta del Gallo. This 4.3 kilometer climb, average gradient of 6.6%. They've got an advantage of 1 minute and 23 seconds as we get another replay of the first category climb, the Collado Bermejo. Looked as though it's Ward Van Hoff who went across and took the 6 points there in that classification.
So you've got Omar Fraley pulling on the front for Michał Kwiatkowski. That's an interesting choice. Kwiatkowski hasn't really, been that prominent in these kind of the one-day races for a long while now. So maybe he said he's feeling good, and Omar Fraley is going to commit to his kind of case.
Well, it's day done for Alexander Krieger of Tudor Pro Cycling. Just at the back there in the blue jersey, Lewis Askey. It's a narrow climb, and it's quite exposed once you go towards the top as Bob Jungels starts to move forward with Danny Martinez.
Yeah, I think that everybody realises that something's going to happen here. You've got Jan Tratnik just kind of sitting there watching, and you imagine that first sign of weakness that the Visma riders are going to take it up at the front. Already Omar Fraley's been pulling on the front previously, so he's only going to do a couple of kilometres at best, and then and then there's bound to be some kind of counter move here.
Has this got to set something up? Because when you take a look down, Omar Fraley, Michał Kwiatkowski, you can't see, well, I can't see at the moment on this camera shot any other riders from the Ineos Grenadiers.
No, Ben, no.
It's got to launch something.
No, Ben Turner didn't make it back from being in the car, so their only hope's Kwiatkowski now.
Jan Tratnik there for Visma Lease Bike. They're still there with strength in numbers. But the pace being set here, Pippa, by Omar Fraley is putting riders into difficulty. Another handful of riders distanced.
Yeah, it looks like they're probably down to 25 riders now. You can see the pain on Omar Fraley's face that he's not going to go to the top like this. It'd be, there's bound to be some kind of move somewhere. It's just who's it going to be? Is Kwiatkowski going to take it up and go over the top and then do the descent as fast as he can, or will the Visma riders attack?
Valentin Madouas is still within this group. You can just see him sitting halfway down the group for Groupama FDG. Also is Gorka Izagirre. Ruben Fernandez racing on home roads. The man from Cofidis too. Just at the back of this group, you can see here Mark Donovan of Q36.5 Pro Cycling.
And just in front of him was Alessandro Covi, so there's still fast men still in the group. You've just got to go over the top.
There's confirmation of the intermediate sprint at Murcia. Ben O'Connor taking the 3 points ahead of Wellens and Schachmann. It wasn't really contested because this duo had other ideas on their mind.
So Tim Wellens would be quite happy that he kept Ben O'Connor with him, so O'Connor looks like he's still got enough resources to pull all the way up on this hill. You can see Tim Wellens seems to be under a bit of pressure, but that'll all change as soon as they start going down the other side and they're back onto those big gears again. And of course, Tim Wellens will be reasonably confident in the sprint against Ben O'Connor.
It seems as though as well, once it gets technical, Pippa, that Wellens is perhaps the more confident of the two, and now Kwiatkowski starts to make an injection of pace. Jungels responds for Bodo Hansgrohe. This was all to set up Michał Kwiatkowski, the former world champion. Omar Freile was setting the pace, and immediately this has left some riders trying to chase back to the Polish rider.
It does look like Bob Jungels can follow, and it's going to be up to Jan Tratnik to try to close it down in that steady, almost diesel-like effort that he does. So, good attack by Michał Kwiatkowski. Whether he can hold it all the way to the top, we'll have to see, but so far he's looking good.
It's a steady climb in places, Pippa, where it's quite consistent, but then we start to see the gradients really ramp up, and we see the steep gradients as now Ben O'Connor decides it's time to make an attack.
Yeah,
they had a good cohesion between O'Connor and Wellens, but the Australian has decided now's the time to use his strength. He's come out of his winter well, and now as the gradients start to rise, O'Connor has daylight.
He certainly does, and he's got probably 3-4 kilometers to the top, so he's got to kind of really push on here. You see him just having a look at Tim Wellens, and Wellens is struggling too much, and O'Connor seized his chance.
You'd already said, Pippa, that it was looking as though Tim Wellens was really starting to feel it, and now you see that O'Connor knows he needs to try and make the most of this climb. This is where he's got the upper hand over everybody, and he's clearly come through into this race here at the Tour of Murcia with good form, with gritted teeth, as now Jan Tratnik gets to Kwiatkowski.
Yeah, he does, and he's just kind of ridden his own pace up till here, and like he does, we've seen in the past, he'll just keep this pace all the way to the top. For Ben O'Connor now, he has to establish a big enough gap that Tim Wellens doesn't come back on the descent, because as you can see from this road, it's really twisty, and it's going to be quite dangerous on the way down the other side. So he's probably going to hope to keep a minute at the top, and then he should be okay, as long as he doesn't have any kind of incident on the way down.
Now Jan Tratnik's decided that he doesn't want to wait for those riders behind either. The gap still 1 minute and 12 for O'Connor to the group behind. He'll crest the top of this climb with 11.9 kilometers remaining. His third category climb, the Alto Cresta del Gallo. Now we start to see that Kwiatkowski can't respond to this move of Jan Tratnik. And it's not often, Pippa, that we see Jan Tratnik with an opportunity for himself either.
No, usually he's at the service of somebody else. He's mainly a team rider, so these early races he gets the chance to kind of exploit his own, his own possibilities.
Looks as though Sergio Higuita is trying to come across to Tratnik.
But, you'd have to say that Ben O'Connor's looking good here. He's not looking back, so he's still fully concentrated on the task in hand. And he's still able to get out the saddle, which, for a climber, that shows that they're still in good condition. It's when you're kind of nailed to the saddle that you can realise that most climbers are really on their limit. But he's looking good there. He's dealing with the little kind of changes in gradient really well. You see the difference in that Tim Wellens is quite labouring, kind of sat down, struggling to get over, whereas Ben O'Connor is able to lift himself out of the saddle and get back up to speed again.
Without want of putting a curse on Decathlon AG2 Le Mondial team, they're one of the few World Tour teams without a victory this season. They've started strong, and you can see that all the training, the preparations have gone well. Ben O'Connor with 1 minute and 7 seconds of an advantage to Tratnik. In between the gaps, of course, is Tim Wellens too. So around 16 seconds to Wellens. Now we start to see it's Hugo Page, the Frenchman, who's being distanced here, as is Will Barter.
Yeah, back in that peloton, the riders are going to come in groups of 4 and 5. This early in the year, and a kind of slightly technical, hard finish. There's not going to be a big group coming in for a sprint on this race.
The wind coming onto the right-hand side, a little bit of tailwind as they traverse their way up this climb. A little moment of a plateau on this climb. You'll be able to see the top of the climb. There it is, up ahead. It's a roaring tailwind.
Yeah, so the
all
graphic
the fans made their way up to the top here, Pippa.
Yeah, so the graphic's slightly out. The top is at 11.9 kilometres according to the road book. So just slightly out there on what's on the screen. But now Ben O'Connor has to kind of reassess where he is. Stay really concentrated, because if he doesn't know the descent, it's going to be quite scary for him. He's going to have to race down to maintain that gap. But so far he's looked in control.
Ben O'Connor crests the top of the Alto Cresta del Gallo. The third category climb, he picks up the 3 points. What he's looking for is the victory here at the Tour of Murcia. And with a laboured look, Tim Wellens is desperately trying to chase down Ben O'Connor. He crests the top of the climb. And not too far behind is Jan Tratnik.
So Ben O'Connor was about 20 seconds down there. It looks like it's about another 30 seconds to Jan Tratnik. So, unless there's some kind of incident on the way down, Ben O'Connor should be okay. But it really does depend if who knows the descent.
Tratnik crests the top of the climb. What's this descent like, Pippa? Because you can see from the ascent, it's not so smooth.
It's going to be exactly like the on the way up. Slightly broken surfaces now and again, and a lot of corners, a lot of wind, and hopefully not too much gravel on the corners kicked up by the cars in front.
The chasing group behind consists of Hugo Page, the Frenchman. Just in front of him is Will Barter. Out of the saddle for Bora Hansgrohe is Bob Jungels, and just ahead of him is Tudor Pro Cycling's Matteo Trentin. Meanwhile, Ben O'Connor is on a mission. He's on the descent down the other side. He'll get to the bottom of the descent with 8 kilometers remaining. He's in full flight.
Thankfully, and thankfully it's not the same kind of tiny road he's come into. A kind of housing development here on the top of on the side of the hill. So that's going to be slightly safer for him. Instead of having to. The bit we see Jan Tratnik is quite dangerous if you don't know where the road's going, and at these kind of speeds you commit to the corner without not really knowing what's around there.
They'll be heading back into the headwind once they get to the bottom of this descent, as Ben O'Connor goes through 10 kilometers remaining here at the Tour of Murcia. Shaves off a lot of speed. It's the first time that he's looked around Ben O'Connor to see where is Tim Wellens. Is anyone behind? It shows the confidence.
Yeah, he's going to have a look, because he's probably not, getting any kind of radio signal there from the team car or to tell him what the gap is. So as long as he can look around and not see Tim Wellens immediately there, he can kind of relax a bit, knowing that Wellens isn't, immediately going to come back, if he is going to come back at all. I think he'd be quite glad that, that the descent isn't as technical as the climb was.
Very different type of descent, wasn't it, in comparison to the ascent? A few little narrow sections, but there's certainly a lot of flow to the descent over the other side.
You can see there's a couple of bits here that you wouldn't want to mess up, but compared with what they've just been over on the ascent, it's certainly a lot safer.
Here's the monastery towards the bottom of the climb, the bottom of the descent. Fantastic panoramic views as we see the results of the King of the Mountain there. O'Connor ahead of Wellens and Tratnik. It's right in the city, in the heart. You can hear the wind buffeting off the microphone on our TV camera motorbike. He's trying to get some respite where he possibly can, and let's not forget that O'Connor was part of that chasing group that bridged across to the initial breakaway over the top of that big climb in the middle of the race today, the Collado Bermejo. 7.2 kilometer climb, the first category. He just makes a little mistake there on that left-hand turn. Little adjustment and he's straight back out of the saddle. Another acceleration and straight back into his rhythm.
Didn't really scare himself, but a little bit of a correction mid-corner to just tightened up a little bit on him. So yeah, those things kind of happen when you're in complete oxygen depth, like he will be at the moment. So we've got Wellens is about 15 seconds and Tratnik's is somewhere 50 seconds or so behind. So looking good so far.
You can see the difference in body language between Wellens and O'Connor. Let's see where Tratnik is on the road, because he's still making inroads to Wellens. Wellens still with his head down, Pippa, and he's in the middle of these two riders, and like you said before, perhaps difficult with radio signal to the team car.
Yeah, he won't necessarily see where Ben O'Connor is, and he'll know that the riders are coming from behind, so he's kind of stuck in a world of pain at the moment.
We've got this long section of road that will take the riders to 2.3 kilometers to go, all the way into this finish with a headwind. It's not deterring O'Connor. He's down at the bottom of the block.
You can see Tim, the body language of Tim Wellens. He's slightly more labour, head down a lot more. So he's obviously at the end of his tether now. Whereas Ben O'Connor's still got his head up and he's still taking in as much information as he can.
The group chasing behind consists of Will Barter, Hugo Page, Sergio Higuita and Matteo Trentin. They're around 20 seconds behind Tratnik. Here we see Jon Izagirre. Also there is Gianluca Brambilla. Likewise with Stef Kras, the Belgian. This is another chasing group. There's no cohesion, particularly in those chasing groups behind, and that's only working into the favour of O'Connor here, the fact that there's no one team who has the control.
No, and there's not going to be, the race has been too hard up to this point, and it's so early in the season that not everybody's going to have that depth of form to, to survive in this kind of environment.
We're still seeing 1 minute and 7 to that main group of chasers. I think it's a little less than that when we saw where they were before. But soon he'll be heading back into Murcia. 5 kilometers to go for our sole leader, Ben O'Connor of Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial. He's looking to try and deliver the French World Tour team's first victory of the 2024 season. But now we see the helicopter shot. This looks to be the gap between Wellens and Jan Tratnik.
Yeah, it looks like Tratnik is going to catch Tim Wellens in this form, but the information coming up so far is Ben O'Connor has 30 seconds on Tim Wellens, so I can't see Tratnik coming back right to the front, but he should be able to take back Tim Wellens if there's any kind of tiny little uphill. So that in your third group 108, that's to Jan Tratnik. So in between there, you've still got Tim Wellens at roughly 30 seconds.
4 kilometers remaining for Ben O'Connor. He'll head back into the city of Murcia. Very little to deal with, especially as a lone leader out front. There's a couple of roundabouts, nothing to worry about. That left-hand corner coming with 2.3 kilometers to go, and then that final right-hand turn inside the final kilometer. This is a long laboured effort, and Tratnik's still got something to try and close in on Tim Wellens. It's almost that agonising distance. You're not quite there.
Yeah, and I think that part we saw with Ben O'Connor is just going up as a kind of slight motorway bridge or over the railway line. That was hurting him, so we should see Tim Wellens struggling on that side. He's just about to come to it now, and Tratnik should close up a little bit.
Inside the final 4 kilometers for Tim Wellens, but meanwhile Ben O'Connor is 1 kilometer ahead up the road. He's gone through 3 kilometers remaining, and only now does he start to take a look around. You've got a big gap, Ben. It'll be a while until the chasing duo will be upon you.
There we go, and the Tratnik has caught Tim Wellens on that little rise. It's just a tiny little bridge, and kind of shows the pain that Tim Wellens is in. He's going to have to struggle to stay on that wheel.
Jan Tratnik is taking this opportunity to go for his own result here, and he's not wasting it, Pippa, because you can see that he's made the junction with Wellens, and he's gone straight past and still with that strength.
Yeah, he's still strong. He's hopefully going to try and rid himself of Wellens' company, because that Tim Wellens might be slightly faster than him, but at the end of such a hard race, it's going to be basically how fresh you are, if you're actually fresh at all. But I can't see Tim Wellens collaborating with Jan Tratnik at this moment. He'll just be happy to have some shelter for these last couple of kilometres.
Let's not forget Wellens, another one of those riders who was a part of that group that bridged across to the early breakaway riders.
Did you see that little glance from Jan Tratnik to Wellens to see if he was going to come past? But I get the feeling that Tim Wellens would be quite happy to sit on the wheel until they the final couple of 100 metres, and then maybe race a sprint if he can. But for the moment, you know, it's a minute in front with 2 kilometers to go. I think we can safely say that this is going to be Decathlon AG2R La Mondiale's first win of the year with Ben O'Connor.
And it's a big moment for them. Should they get the victory, of course, a new big sponsor coming on board, a new big title sponsor in decathlon, as the chasers go through 2 kilometers to go.
It'll certainly take the pressure off them. You know, every team needs a win in this kind of first part of the season. You know, so and for decathlon, it'll be a good entry for, you know, into the peloton for them to take a win here.
Under the Flamme Rouge for our lone leader, Ben O'Connor of Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial. Behind is still Tratnik and Tim Wellens, as now they realise bringing back the sole leader isn't going to be a possibility. Now they start to play the games in this chasing group, and for Wellens, who's been out front for such a long period of time during this race, he's not going to give Tratnik a turn, but in the chase behind is the Ineos Grenadiers, and it's Mikhail Kwiatkowski who's still in pursuit. He was the man who started the attacks from behind in the peloton on that final climb of the day. The day is going to belong to Ben O'Connor. He was away with his 2 teammates of Paul Lepera and Nicolas Prodhomme. They were in the strongest position, Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial. They had the strength, they had the options and the cards to play. Ben O'Connor, he didn't want to wait for Tim Wellens on the climb, and as he takes a look around, it's delight, it's joy for Ben O'Connor. 2 years after his last victory, Ben O'Connor is victorious and he wins the Tour of Murcia. A great reception from the fans, a great way to start your season, and a great way for Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial to take their first victory of the 2024 season. Behind, it's Jan Tratnik and Tim Wellens, and it's the battle for the remaining podium places. Over the little clinkers, they'll switch to the right-hand side over that little narrowing on the bridge. Wellens setting himself up for the sprint as Tratnik takes a look over his left-hand shoulder as Wellens tries to come through on the right. Tratnik, the fresher of the 2. Tratnik starts to open up, and Wellens, what's he got left in the tank? Is it anything? Tratnik is given his opportunity on the day to try and get a result, and the Slovenian delivers a 2nd place at the Tour of Murcia, 3rd to Wellens. But the day belongs to this man, the man from down under, Ben O'Connor. He wins the Tour of Murcia. Behind the sprint for 4th place and the remaining places in the top 10. Danny Martinez leading things out. There is Valentin Madouas. Steph Kras is also there, as is Corvi. Jon Izagirre is trying to move himself up, likewise with Gianluca Brambilla. Coming through is Sergio Higuita of Bora Hansgrohe. Is he going to take it on the line? It was close. Looks like Valentin Madouas takes 4th, just ahead of Sergio Higuita. Well, quite the finish there, Pippa. As we're still coming through, here's Bob Jungels and Hugo Page, Will Barter and Matteo Trentin.
I think it'd be fair to say that Decathlon AG2R, you know, deserved that. You know, they made a lot of the race. They had 3 riders in that main escape, so you know, their tactics have worked out very well today. Just looking through Ben O'Connor's results, it's only his 2nd one-day race that his win. So usually his results have come in stage racing. So the 2nd time he's won in a one-day race. The previous one was Tour of Jura in 2022. So doesn't often win one-day races, but it'd be a good start to the year for him.
Of course, for O'Connor, stage winner in the Giro d'Italia, Tour de France. It's been a long time coming as we just see this small group come through to the finish, and two more riders from Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial. It's 2 years since his last victory for Ben O'Connor. It's not a bad way to start your season either, because first race of the year, first win in the breakaway, incredibly strong.
Yeah, you know, he was under a bit of difficulty at first with Tim Wellens on the flat, but as soon as he went up that final climb, you know, his prowess and his talent for that came to the fore, and Tim Wellens faded away. I think you know, he's obviously going to be really happy with this result. It kind of sets up the arrival of a big sponsor like Decathlon into the team, and you know, it augurs well for the rest of the season.
You were talking about earlier on of how important it is to start off the season well. There's no training races anymore. It's important to come into the season with good form, but also just mentally to have that confidence that you've set your year up well.
Yeah, I think we saw there that Ben O'Connor's had a really good, successful winter. You know, he'd been down in Australia and trained well. So, whereas you would think, his first race he might miss a little bit of top end power. He's obviously in good enough shape that he's climbing well. His natural talent for that has come to the fore. And you can see how difficult the conditions have been. It's been really windy, so not an easy race, mentally or physically.
The thick coat's on, the wind's still blowing, a headwind all the way into that finish. Incredibly difficult conditions. It suited Ben O'Connor. As we take a look over Murcia, there's the provisional results. Ben O'Connor ahead of Jan Tratnik and Tim Wellens, the top three. The conditions deceptive. Blue sky and cloud. A wind roared through, and it was Ben O'Connor who roared to victory. You really got a sense of his confidence when he made that initial attack, Pippa, on the final climb of the day up to the Alto Cresta del Gallo.
Yeah, you think, he probably sensed that Tim Wellens was getting, had reached the end of his tether. So, took his chance when he could, and managed to take that all the way to the finish. I think it kind of showed, that the difference between a rider like Tim Wellens, who's going to be able to pull that big gear in, but then, if he doesn't wear out the climber, then he's in trouble later on.
Let's hear from Jan Tratnik, second on the day. He got an opportunity to lead for Visma Lease bike.
Yeah, in the end, it's a nice beginning of the season. But yeah, if I would have legs on this long climb, I would be also in the first group. So the long climb was a little bit difficult for me. But yeah, the last one suits me well. And I also felt a little bit better in the end of the race. So yeah, I must say that I'm satisfied. For beginning, it's super good. A nice start of the season.
A nice start to the season indeed. For some, they'll have bigger objectives, bigger goals, but for this man, with a big objective of the Giro d'Italia this season, a good way to start off his first string of races for the year. For Ben O'Connor, he's got on his programme the Tour of the Alps, the Giro d'Italia, as I mentioned. Well, it was a nice calm start, calm before the storm. 9 riders managing to get an advantage, and it was Paul Lepera who was the real initiator of that breakaway of 9 riders. Just outside 40 kilometres to go, it was Ben O'Connor and Tim Wellens who sensed that the cohesion was starting to dwindle within that leading group. They managed to get a gap, and into Murcia, the duo had an advantage of just over a minute and a half. But once they got to the final climb of the day, onto the Alto Cresta del Gallo, it was Ben O'Connor who felt the confidence and felt that he had the legs to try and drop the Belgian of UAE Team Emirates, Tim Wellens. His attack came to some success, and over the other side and onto the descent, he continued to build on his advantage over Wellens, who was chasing. Behind, it was Tratnik who managed to join up with Tim Wellens, the Slovenian. An opportunity to be the leader for the day. In the end, no one could do anything to the advantage of Ben O'Connor, the Australian from Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial. A solo victory into Murcia for the 28-year-old Australian rider. He delivers his first race win of the season in his first race of the season. The first race win of Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial 2. Success all round. For Jan Tratnik, he had the better over Tim Wellens, who'd had a long day out in the breakaway, over 130 kilometres in the breakaway for the Belgian. Tratnik picks up second on the day, third for Wellens, and behind it was a close sprint between Valentin Madouas and Sergio Higuita. Well, there's the results. Ben O'Connor wins ahead of Tratnik and Wellens. Well, soon we'll be heading over to the Figueira in Portugal. Remco Evenepoel will be racing. First time alongside Mikel Landa. You can watch all the action live over in the Figueira Classic. If you're watching on the television, you're going to leave us here for the Tour of Murcia. You'll be joining the Figueira Classic. From myself, Hannah Walker and Pippa York, thanks for joining us. If you're watching on digital, you can stay with us. Well, plenty of racing on this weekend, Pippa, because not only have we had the UAE Tour for women, I won't spoil the result, but also with the Tour of Murcia, we've had the Tour of Oman, Figueira Classic. There's so much on today, as well as the Tour de la Provence.
And the cyclocross.
And the cyclocross, the Super Prestige, of course.
So, you know, if you're a cycling fan, you've been spoiled.
Well, as cycling trophies go, that's quite the impressive one for Ben O'Connor.
I think you'll be wondering where he's going to put that in his at home.
Something nice for the mantelpiece. Make sure it can get home safely. He'll take the Primafrio yellow jersey too as the winner of the race. See here, race speaker in the background, Juan Marie Guajardo. Perhaps in the end, podium jersey, he's decided to go against the grain.
He wasn't quite sure if that was a podium jersey or if it was a proper jersey. A little bit confusion. I think it's meant to be the other way around, but you know, he won't mind.
I think so. Unless you're the sponsors, of course. He also takes the Primafrio truck, of course, a big sponsor here for the Tour of Murcia.
La ceremonia protocolaria, nuestra felicitación, ahí está el podio, ahí está nuestro ganador, ahí tenemos a Ben O'Connor ganando esta vuelta.
Ben O'Connor winning his first race of the season here at the Tour of Murcia. Good winter of training. One man who was in the breakaway alongside this man, Ben O'Connor, was Seb Kuss. Let's hear from the Vuelta a España Grand Tour winner from last year.
Yeah, we wanted to make it a bit of a hard race for the sprinters. Yeah, I thought it was a good moment to attack because the breakaway was still pretty close. And then, yeah, it turned out that was more or less the move that made it to the finish. But yeah, there was one moment where I was a bit tired and wasn't paying attention, was a bit far back in the group, and then that's when the winning move went. But yeah, it's good that Jan was really strong and finished second, so I think we can be more or less happy.
How would you rate your shape for this first test?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, I'm tired. It was a hard day, but yeah, so far so good.
And how do you find the welcome of the Spanish public? Like you're like a local hero.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, always nice people, and yeah, smiling and cheering everybody on the climb. So it's always a good atmosphere.
Well, he's not wrong, because I have to say, the crowds were impressive all throughout each of the villages, the towns. A wonderful sight to see. Everyone spending their Saturday roadside here at the Tour of Murcia. Well, ends with a smaller version of the trophy there, Pippa, sorry.
Yeah, so interesting, you know, that was Visma's plan for today, to try and get rid of the sprinters. And, you know, he had enough kind of thoughts about what, you know, he wasn't strong enough to follow Wellens and O'Connor, so right, you know, that little bit moment of inattention, you know, probably didn't cost him a place on the podium, but you know, that had the teammates like Tratnik on the back foot, then trying to chase it down. But you know, it's early season yet, and I think he's quite happy with how that turned out.
And for many teams who didn't bring a pure out-and-out sprinter, that was what they had to do. They had to make sure that the likes of Arnaud Delis, even Noah Hobbs or Luis Aular, they didn't come to the finish line with a fast man. Even Hugo Page, he's got a real great turn of speed on him. As now Ben O'Connor comes to the podium. We see the top three. It was a demanding race, and in the end the peloton couldn't quite bring back the remnants of the breakaway. The final remaining of the chasing group that came across on that first categorized climb, Ben O'Connor. Well, his trophy cabinet will be making a good indent, won't it, for the 2024 season for Ben O'Connor?
It certainly
nicely
will,
sculpted trophy.
Yeah, 3 trophies for one race, you know. It did used to be a tour, you know. It used to be, what, 5, I think 6 days when it, about 10 years ago. So, yeah, they've obviously kept the same number of trophies.
Not just a trophy, a medal to go with it too.
Bueno, pues esa felicitación y sobre todo nuestra más sincera enhorabuena también a nuestros supercampeones. Ahora sí, los 3 mejores también subiendo al podio de la carrera. Felicidades a nuestros supercampeones. Gracias por los aplausos. Felicidades, campeones. Enhorabuena.
4 hours and 50 minutes of racing. Ben O'Connor wins 58 seconds ahead of Tratnik and Tim Wellens. In the end, despite the chase from behind, he didn't lose too much time, and considering when he made his effort and when he made his attack. Let's hear from Ben O'Connor on the podium alongside Juan María Guajardo.
Pretty stoked with today. It was really, really hard actually all day. The wind was pretty terrible in some sections, but it made for a hard race, and I think, yeah, I'm definitely going to remember it.
not only a victory for you, it's a victory for all of your team. They can run the Qatar, a very good job for you.
Yeah, I think we're really good today. I think with Paul and Bray and Nico with me as well, we tried to make sure that we stayed away as long as we could, and yeah, kind of took a moment with Tim, and then we got away on the final climb. But yeah, I actually loved today. It was really good. It was honest racing.
Hey, thank you very much, Jan. We are going to speak with you. The second position for you. I think so. It's a very good result for you. This second position in this race in the Vuelta Ciclista Murcia.
Yeah, I'm really satisfied with the start of the season. So it could be better to win, but also second place. It's nice.
It was amazing. The last kilometer for today, the extra long, the windy day, and the effort for you.
Hey, it was fun day. Everything. A little bit climbing, crosswind. So yeah, really, really fun day.
Solamente con la cara ya no vale, Tim. Profitez de parler avec Tim toujours. Ah, c'est bon, ça marche. Surtout, c'était la folie aujourd'hui, cette journée du cyclisme. On va remercier l'effort de tous les coureurs.
Oui, c'était une belle journée. Je crois que c'était une très belle course. Je crois que tous les coureurs ils vont dormir très très bien parce qu'on a souffert.
Dice que los ciclistas van a dormir muy bien esta noche después del esfuerzo realizado aquí en carrera, la verdad. Bon, il a manqué très peu pour être avec Beno Connor dans les dernières montées à la Costa.
Oui, certes, j'étais content d'être parti à deux. J'étais en train de penser de gagner. Avant la montée, je faisais un peu plus tranquille. Mais je sentais que sur la montée, j'étais sur la limite. J'ai dépassé la limite. Et puis c'était compter les kilomètres jusqu'à l'arrivée.
Pero dicho, que ha pasado el límite de su esfuerzo personal en el día de hoy y que eso es lo que le ha faltado también para seguir la rueda también de Ben O'Connor y que ha sido, bueno, supervivencia, digamos, también para llegar. Lo dit toujours, que je ne sais pas qu'est-ce que tu as en Espagne, qu'est-ce que tu as des débuts de saison. Je me souviens à Mallorca, je me souviens aussi des Tours d'Andalousie, que on m'a dit que te plaît.
Oui, c'est les gens en Espagne que j'aime bien.
Dice que le gusta a la gente de España, esto es.
Oui, non, j'aime bien m'entraîner. Je suis toujours en forme au début de la saison. C'est toujours de très belles courses au début. Donc j'espère continuer comme ça.
Merci, un aplauso enorme para nuestros supercampeones, para Tim Vélez con Ben O'Connor.
Third place on the day, Tim Wellens. A nice reception from the crowd there in Murcia too. And great to hear the thoughts on stage of Ben O'Connor, Jan Tratnik and Tim Wellens.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that they were going to make Tim Wellens speak English, but you know, for some reason he did it in French. I'm not quite sure if he comes from the Belgian, the French-speaking part of Belgium, but he was just saying, you know, it had been a very hard race and everybody in the peloton would be sleeping well that night. He tried to recover just before the last climb, you know, trying to keep some energy for that last climb, and you know, he wasn't able to. But you know, he's quite happy with his form. He's saying he always, you know, comes into top form quite early, and it's been really nice to race in Spain because he quite often trains there. And, you know, I think all three, you know, riders will be happy with the day when, you know, especially for Ben O'Connor, you know, after 2023 been quite a difficult season for him, so, you know, to start the year with a win is going to be really important for them as they go going forward.
Ben O'Connor gets his first victory of the season and his first race of the season, and of course the first race victory for Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial. Tratnik in second, Wellens in third, Kwiatkowski in fourth. Well, thanks for joining us here, myself, Hannah Walker and Pepe York, for the Tour of Murcia. I'll leave you with these closing clips. You can join us tomorrow for Almeria 2, and I'll be back alongside Rob Hatch. Windy, hard day down in the south of Spain. O'Connor victorious. Tratnik having his opportunity and delivering a podium place for Visma Lease Bike. But in the end, the day belonged to this man from down under, Ben O'Connor. From myself, Hannah Walker and Pippa York, we'll see you tomorrow.